Okay, everybody, we're going to be talking about Alaska. And before that, we'll go to Mount Rainier National Park and take a peek at that. And then we'll stop at Vancouver and look around there. Vancouver's a beautiful city, I'm telling you. But let's get started. So here's what my wife and I did a few years ago. We spent a couple of days in Seattle, and that included Mount Rainier and stuff. Flew to Anchorage, took the train up to Denali, took a bus back to Seward, and then took a 7-day cruise, hopscotching along the coast here and seeing all kinds of glaciers and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So that's what we'll be looking at. Now, of course, here's Seattle. Vancouver's up here. Mount Rainier is about 80 driving miles south of Seattle, and notice not too far from good old Mount St. Helens. So we took a tour down to Mount Rainier. So here's the mountain itself here. This is a big view of the park. We'll talk a little bit more about the geography of it in a minute. But there's some early evidence of Native Americans, indigenous people living there, and stayed there for hunting and fishing, but little evidence of any permanent settlements in the area. They named the mountain Tacoma, which is where Tacoma, Washington comes from. And then Captain George Vancouver, who was exploring this area, renamed it Rainier. The first summit of Rainier was in 1870. It's at about 14,500 feet. And good old John Muir, who shows up everywhere out here, also climbed it in 1888. It was established as a forest reserve. Early on, they were establishing these places as forest reserve, which means they could go in and log it and all that kind of stuff. Muir, Sierra Club, and others fought to convert it to a national park so that it was all protected. So in 1889, it was established as a national park. So this is another look at the national park itself. You'll see this trail that runs around the perimeter of the park. This is called the Wonderland Trail, 93 miles. And you might think, boy, that'd be a neat hike. Well, I looked at the elevation profile on this, and it looks pretty tough. But I guess if you're a champion Appalachian Trail hiker, you could probably do this one too. Getting permits is pretty difficult, but looks like a beautiful hike if you can find the time and get out there and do it. We drove in through the Nisqually entrance, and we visited an area called Longmire. We drove down here and visited a place called Grove of the Patriarchs that I'll show you, and then back up to the Paradise Visitor Center. So we saw quite a bit. As you notice, the highway kind of ends up here. So about half the park has no highways in it whatsoever. There's a picture of Mount Rainier from our airplane as we left to go home. It's an active volcano. It hasn't erupted in a while, but is always capable of doing it again. 26 major glaciers just on this Mount Rainier right here. Like I say, when we came in, we came in down here. The first place we went was all the way over here to the east side to the Grove of the Patriarchs. And this was a beautiful place, had short trails in there, full of Douglas fir, red cedar, western hemlocks. Some of the trees pretty gigantic, as you'll see. It was a beautiful stop and a beautiful hike. These were Douglas firs here, so there I am, and you can see how big the trees were. Not as big as sequoias, not as big as redwoods, but pretty darn big. So between boardwalks and trails, it's an easy hike and really, really pretty. We then drove over to Longmire. Longmire was founded in the 1880s. James Longmire, an explorer and pioneer, was out there in that area messing around and chasing a lost horse, and he found these hot springs. So he decided, what the heck, build a resort, charge $5 a week, whoops, $5 a week for a beautiful cabin like this and access to the hot springs, and had a pretty busy business going on. This became the park headquarters and was a park headquarters for almost 100 years. First beautiful view of Mount Rainier from there. Lots of times it's under clouds, but we had a nice beautiful view of it from Longmire. And there's some short trails there to walk around, so it's really nice. We next drove up to the Paradise Visitor Center. So this is about a mile high and jumping off point for most of the Mount Rainier climbs. So from here, they've only got 9,000 feet to go. Beautiful inn built in 1916 with native logs. Beautiful, beautiful area. And another beautiful view of Rainier. So that was a good Rainier viewing day. So after that, hopped a plane, flew to Anchorage for our train up to Denali and the rest of our trip. So some facts about Alaska that are kind of amazing. I can't quite envision any of these. Twice as big as Texas, 39 mountain ranges, 34,000 miles of shoreline, 3 million lakes. Are you kidding me? 170 million acres of wetlands, 100,000 glaciers. Alaska is an amazing state. You notice it says largest concentration of bald eagles. Most, especially on our bus trip going back, someplace we'd stop. And there were so many eagles, it was like running into a group of seagulls on the beach or something. I mean, they were just all over the place. So they were just a very, very common bird up there. So we took the train from Anchorage right here up to Denali. This whole railroad goes from Seward all the way up to Fairbanks. And it was, you can see it was built in the early part of the 1900s. And they made a deal with Juneau. We get the railroad, you get to be capital. So Juneau's the capital, the landlocked capital. We'll see it later. But Anchorage got the railroad. So it's a beautiful train ride up. You got these sightseeing cars. This is the top deck. Underneath is a beautiful dining car, great food. And so it's a great ride up and you get to see so much. And there's a tour guide along the way telling you what you're looking at. So it's really, really nice. We had some beautiful views going up. This is all what they call permafrost. And the permafrost is going away. This map kind of shows what is not going to be permafrost anymore. The lighter purple is what is soon to be not permafrost anymore. And then dark is still permafrost, at least for the time being. But you know, when that soil thaws, it releases a lot of methane and stuff like that and contributes to global warming. And it's certainly going to change the environment up there as that permafrost melts. So then we ended up in Denali National Park, obviously occupied since at least 11,000 BC when folks supposedly came across the land bridge. Vancouver visited on his explorations. We bought it from Russia right after the Civil War. Everybody laughed about Seward's icebox, but turned out to be a pretty good purchase, I guess. Of course, there was a gold rush up there. The first ascent of Mount Denali was in 1913. That's 20,000 feet. Established the national park in 1917, and then expanded quite a bit with these national preserves that were added onto it. And then a stamp of a wilderness area was stamped on top of the national park area. So the wilderness area is, they try to keep as pristine as possible. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So this is a map of the park itself. This is the only entrance and visitor center. And then you can drive your car as far as here when it's drivable. And then there's a bus tour you can take, which we took, that goes out to Eielson Visitor Center out here. And then there's a shuttle bus that runs occasionally all the way out. So if you're going to be going all the way out and camping way out here in the middle of nowhere or climbing Mount Denali, you can get a bus out there. Now, this bus is used obviously for tourists, but hikers also use it. They'll take a bus out here, get dropped off in the middle of nowhere. There's no trails here, no established trails here. It's supposed to be pristine. And so you just drop off where you want, grab your pack, go hike out here somewhere. When you want to come back, you come back to the park road and wait for the bus. So that would be an interesting adventure, that's for sure. On our bus trip, we went about 60 miles out and then returned 60 miles. Had a lot of beautiful views along the park road there. And unfortunately, only about 10 or 15% of the visitors get to see Mount Denali because it's usually clouded over. Fortunately, we were really lucky. We had a great day where we could got a beautiful view of Mount Denali. So there's a beautiful view of Mount Denali. So lots of wildlife. Now the poor moose and reindeer and stuff try to stick to these snow areas because the bugs are just voracious. And so if they stay out here in the snowed area, they get some relief from the bugs. But the bus driver said sometimes you'll just find them going nuts and running down to the road with their eyes, mouth and stuff full of bugs. Pretty sad. And sometimes you can get pretty close to wildlife, and but we were always careful about that, more careful than some we saw. The only marked trails are around the visitor center. So here's the visitor center area, and you can see there's several trails around here. Some really good ones. This Horseshoe Lake Trail was beautiful, and we really got close to seeing some beavers and stuff like that, and moose. And I'll show you some pictures of that. But there's several trails here from the visitor center that are marked that you can hike on. And we stayed off the site here at a lodge about here. We were able to take this little connector trail in and then do all this hiking around on all these trails and then hike back to our lodge. So that was nice. So Horseshoe Lake Trail, Spruce Forest Trail, McKinley Station Trail are three of them we hiked on. And you can see they're in good shape and well marked. None of them too long. I think one's about 6 miles. That's the closest I've ever got to a beaver dam, so it's kind of neat to go there and see them doing their thing. And moose running around in there pretty close too. So, and some beautiful views from some of the higher trails looking out and around. So it was really nice to be able to hike around there and see that stuff. We also took an afternoon raft down the Nenana River and got to see that. That was really nice. So in about 2 days, we were able to see a lot of Denali. We took the bus trip. We had time to get out along the bus trip and see stuff. We took all those hikes down there around the visitor center. Plus, we got a chance to do some river rafting. So from there, we just took a bus back, and the bus pretty much follows the train route, but maybe on the other side of the valley down to Seward. And so the cruise was a Norwegian cruise, 7 days, with lots of stops, lots of activities, and lots of fun. And before we got on the ship, we had a little time to walk around, kind of take a look at Seward, which is a pretty small town, mostly a cruise and tourist area. But we were able to take a drive out to the first glacier we could see. So from Seward, you could take a drive from the hotel, take a tour out, and you can see you can hike along this trail and get pretty close to the exit glacier. So, and it's pretty rapidly retreating on the road coming up. You see signs of where the glacier was at different years. 1887 was here, 1897 was here, and you can get a feel for how quickly it's receding. That was one place we stopped. That was a 2010 location, and it's quite a bit ways up from there now. So just a little bit about glaciers here. the ice field up here in the accumulation zone is what gets heavy and pushes the ice down. So a glacier has to be something that moves, and it's pushed down from above. Sometimes there's other glaciers, tributary glaciers, that'll come in. It'll build crevasses sometimes. The ice is underneath, there's snow on top. Then it finally gets to a point where it starts to melt. It leaves moraines at its farthest point, so you can see moraines build up with dirt and rocks and stuff that have been pushed down. And then you can see that outwash plain I think you saw earlier. Well, I think we'll see some more of those. So this is another look at Exit Glacier, a little close up. You can see the crevasses and stuff. Where we were standing, you can see the scraping on the bedrock from where the glacier scraped along the bedrock and along the sides on the cliffs, which are, you know, evidence that the glacier made all this valley and dug all this up. Kind of neat. We got on the ship, and before we went very far, we went up into the look at the Hubbard Glacier. This is a huge glacier, 6 miles wide, and you can see where it is located right here. So this is kind of looking at it from above, and it is receding, but it kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes it plugs up this Russell Fjord, and when that ever breaks through, it causes a huge flood, like it did there in 1986 and 2002. The ship will come right up as close as it can get to the glacier. You know, the captain will look and see what's floating in the water and what the action on the glacier looks like and decide how close he can get. He got pretty close to all of them that we went up to. So this is the ice, maybe 400 years old here on the bottom that's being pushed down. And this ice has traveled 76 kilometers to get to this point. So there's always calving coming off there. Sometimes huge icebergs are calved off at one time. But you can see it's always breaking away. So there's lots of action to watch when you get up close. From there, we went to a place called Icy Strait Point. That area is owned by the Tlingit people. And we did quite a few things there. There are a number of excursions you could take off the ship. There's the world's largest zip line. We almost did that, but we really wanted to kayak. This is about our only opportunity to kayak. So we did the kayak trip, and that was a lot of fun. Quite beautiful. That's a little town there at Icy Strait Point. And there we went to Juneau. Like I say, that's the landlocked capital, and became the capital in the railroad deal. So I don't know who got the best of that, but so be it. In Juneau, we went to see a couple glaciers. This is the Mendenhall Glacier, and we were able to get pretty close to it as well. We took a boat ride out to see the whales, the baleen whales. And, you know, you never see a whole whale, unfortunately, but, you know, this is about as much as you see when his whole body comes up. See lots of whale's tails. Boats can get within about 50 feet of them, and that's it. But there were a lot of whales out there, 45 feet long, 30 tons, eat a ton of food a day. That's amazing. Even saw some seals hanging out on the buoys. So this is the kind of ship, the little boat you go out on to do your whale watching. We also went up to Sawyer Glacier from there before we moved on south. We get pretty close to that one too. You can see the ice that is calved off of the glacier in there. But we were able to get pretty close to it. And there's always a few seals hopping onto those little islands to float around. Our next stop was Skagway. This town was born with the gold rush in 1896. Not much of a population now. pretty nice old-timey city. And these are some pictures from the gold rush era. I think you've seen pictures like this before. It's kind of a classic picture. Certainly you've seen it in the movies and stuff like that. And this is a view of the gold rush people and the whole line that's going up on the plateau to look for gold. They said if you got out of line for some reason, you forgot something or something like that, it would take you days to get back in line. There's so many people. But you can really get a feel for this by watching that Call of the Wild movie. 100,000 prospectors swarmed to Skagway to look for gold. We took the easy way and took the old railway. This was completed in 1900 and goes up to the summit. And it goes fairly close to the route that the land route that they took. And this was really a fun trip, a lot to see. Beautiful, beautiful going up there. Next was Ketchikan. Stopped there. We didn't have much rain. It was kind of foggy and misty, but not much rain. But 160 inches a year. I think we might approach that in North Florida here this year, don't you think? Getting a lot of rain. So it's pretty town, pretty city to look at. And we took a tour boat into the Misty Fords National Monument, which was really beautiful, as you can see, and just cruised nice and silently up through Misty Fords. It was really a pretty trip. Lots of waterfalls coming down, lots of seals hanging, seals hanging out. This pillar, which was a pillar of basalt from an underwater volcano vent, sticks up. And when Vancouver had first come in here, he thought it was some kind of a ghost ship or something. It's gigantic, much bigger than his boats. And he could just see it in the fog, and they were kind of afraid to approach it. Finally, they got close enough and realized it was just a pillar of basalt, not some kind of a strange, mysterious ship. Okay. So we finished off in Vancouver, and right along here somewhere, there was a guy out there in a rowboat with a trumpet, and he plays the Canadian national anthem over and over again to the cruise ships as they come through. He does that every day. So that was a nice welcome back to Vancouver. Vancouver is a beautiful city. I can't say enough good about it. When you look at the area, it's pretty big, 2.5 million people. This picture right here is on a waterway called False Creek. I'll show you on a map a little bit about where that is. It's not really a creek; it's just a bay. But of course, we're there in the summertime in late June. But I don't think it ever gets that bad in Vancouver, not that cold or anything. But there were boats, there were little water taxis you could take up and down the water. There were kayaks, there were seaplanes. This whole waterway area was just all kinds of traffic and recreation, and tons of people down there. You sure wish that they could do something close to this on the St. Johns River. It was just a beautiful place to be. This is another picture of False Creek. The Olympic Center was there. So this is the Vancouver area, and this is False Creek right here. Then there's also a sound here that's another waterway. So the whole metropolitan area down here is really a rocking place. I'm always thinking that if things don't go the way I want in November, this might be the place to go. My wife thinks it might be too expensive, but boy, what a wonderful city it is! I'll tell you, and it's worth it if you haven't just visited Vancouver. Go to Vancouver in the summertime. Has quite an area of First Peoples there. A little Spanish influence. Vancouver stopped there as well. This is pictures of the downtown area, beautiful downtown area to walk around in. You can see these pictures are from this area here. We went out to Stanley Park, walked around. We took a hop on, hop off, and it stopped there at Stanley Park, so we had all the time we wanted to get off and walk around the trails there. Beautiful park, long settled by indigenous people, 1,000-acre park. So it's really, really nice. Then we took a tour bus over to Victoria Island. So bus goes on here, gets on a huge ferry that carries cars and buses and everything else, and goes over to Vancouver Island, which was really a cool place. So we went down first to Victoria, which is the capital of New Brunswick. And this is the Capitol House, beautiful old architecture there. This was a beautiful hotel right downtown as well. And we walk around into some narrow streets and some nice touristy places there in Victoria. Really a beautiful area. And then we went up to Butchart Gardens, which is up, like Victoria's down here, Butchart Gardens up here. Was an old cement factory, mining limestone forever. And so they just mined it till there wasn't anything left. And then the guy bought it, and his wife started a little tea garden. And before you know it, she kept on expanding it using the greatest landscape architects in the world. Money was obviously no object. And it's a beautiful 55-acre, immaculately landscaped and kept area, and you just walk around the trails, and every time you turn around, it's just a beautiful scene to see. So that was fast, but here I am with some of my buddies to say the end, and of course I had some antlers to play with as well.